I'm Dr. Paula Hartman-Stein, a clinical psychologist and an AARP volunteer. After Hurricane Helene, community organizations and governmental structures, both locally, regionally, and nationally, came together to help our citizens get what they needed in terms of food, water, shelter, safety, communication, and infrastructure repairs. And neighbor helped neighbor across the area. But weather disasters lead to collective emotional trauma. In fact, 6 months after Hurricane Helene, AARP did a survey, and 30% of their respondents said that their mental health was their greatest challenge. This correlates with studies from the wildfires in Hawaii and after the hurricanes Katrina and Sandy that found that if emotional or psychological impacts were not addressed, they lingered far longer and were much more costly than if they had been addressed immediately. After weather-related disasters, some people develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Some develop what's called post-traumatic growth or resilience. But most people have a grief reaction that causes distress, both physically and mentally to them. Although most people do recover, having immediate support available by trained volunteers can lessen the severity and potentially prevent symptoms from turning into major depression and anxiety disorders. With support from a grant from AARP to the city of Brevard, this video highlights lessons learned from a series of support groups that we conducted in the community immediately after the hurricane. These are lessons that can apply to anyone across the country facing weather-related disasters. In the video, I reference emergency bags. These are bags that you can use if you have to go and evacuate or if you stay in place. Here's examples of contents that are recommended. Water for about 3 days, non-perishable food, supplies for your pets if you have one, a spork, a plate, a hand sanitizer, supplies such as dental supplies, and then of course electronics, and very important, such as your phone charger, batteries. Here's a radio, a hand crank radio. This one actually has the flashlight in it. Blankets, these very thin blankets. These are all tissues, toilet paper, and very important, cash, enough cash on hand. And here is an example of a weatherproof bag where you can put these items in. AARP often supplies these ready-to-go bags, but you can put that with contents in a weatherproof bag. So the basic elements of physical preparedness for disaster include these elements. Number 1, sign up for all local and national alerts. Number 2, make a plan as to what you should do. Number 3, prepare an emergency bag. And go if evacuation is recommended. I hope this program provides you with useful, practical, as well as emotional strategies going forward in the event of a future weather crisis. Since we're starting our program today, just really quickly, I want you to say one word on how you're feeling when you started the program. I'll start. I am excited and nervous. Okay.
For this program?
Yeah, when you came in.
Quiet.
Anxious and frightened.
Ooh, hopefully we'll change that there, Jean, as we go along. Okay.
Curious and hopeful.
Apprehensive. I was more curious than anything else.
Okay.
Apprehensive. Anxious.
Okay. How about you, Faye?
Grateful.
Curious and encouraged.
Informed.
Excited or anxious, or maybe both.
Curious and doubtful.
I would also have to say curious and excited to learn.
Thank you for being comfortable enough and willing to share with our audience today for this educational program. This is sort of a reunion for some of you. Some of you I know have made friends, am I right?
Yes.
Yes, you made friends as a result of the programs. Yeah. Okay. Allison's going to start us off with a very brief little mindfulness exercise.
Yeah, I want to share an exercise with you all that is really helpful for grounding. So this exercise is helpful for helping us get back into our bodies and have a moment of being in the present, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just 30 seconds that we can be in the present moment, or 2 seconds even. And, this is helpful too, yes, in moments of crisis and in moments of daily stress as well, or when you're dealing with the consequences, or we're getting closer to the anniversary of this crisis. We're going to begin this exercise. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. Has anyone done this before? I see some nods. Okay, so first we're going to name quietly to ourselves 5 things that we can see in the space around us. So if you're by yourself, you can name them out loud, but for now we're just going to name them to ourselves. And you can move your head and neck to look around. Just naming 5 things that we can see. You can get as descriptive as you want as you're naming them to yourself. We forget that we can just look around and name things that we're seeing. So for the next ones, it can be helpful to close your eyes if you want. If you want to leave them open, you can. That's totally fine. You could even cast them down toward the floor if you'd like. But we're going to identify 4 things that we can feel. So now sensing into touch. Maybe you feel the sensation of your feet and your shoes or on the ground. Clothing touching your skin. Maybe you notice temperature in the room. 4 things that you can feel. And then switching to sound. So identifying 3 things that you can hear. Maybe you hear the birds outside, movement, the hum of lighting, whatever it is you're noticing. And then see if you can notice 2 things that you smell. Switching to the sense of smell. Smell of soap on your hands, maybe. And then finally, just noticing 1 thing that you taste. If you taste anything at all. Oh, noticing 1 thing that you can taste. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had dinner before you came here. Maybe you taste toothpaste or gum. And then let's take a couple of deep breaths together as we come back into the space. Breathing in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. One more time, in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. And if you have your eyes closed, you can gently open them. Look around the room, have a stretch if you'd like. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. And that's Dr. Allison, who is a professor of psychology, and she just spent the last year studying in depth mindfulness. So that's why I asked her to participate today. As you all know, it'll be 2 more months, and this will be the 1st-year anniversary of this big storm. Okay, and there is a phenomenon that everybody doesn't know about, but it's called an anniversary reaction. Although I would say that everybody here has had an anniversary reaction to something in their lives, yes? So can anybody willing to give an example of, not the storm idea, but something else you've had a reaction to when the date?
Death of a child.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I had diagnosed with cancer, and we talk about life BC, before cancer, and after cancer.
So when I was a child, my grandfather passed away on a Friday night. And when I was 11, my mother passed away on a Friday night, and she was 40. And from that point, every Friday night, I would get anxious because I was worried that my father wouldn't come home from work, that something was going to happen to him. And the other part was, until I hit age 40 myself, I felt that I was going to die by the time I was 40. And that just, once I got past 40, then I relaxed.
So, yes, anniversary reactions, the point of the stories that we just said, they are real. They are not pretend, they're not made up, and they happen. So these severe storms bring these things up. And what the literature shows us is that it's typically it can be right around now, 2 months before to 2 months after. Typically, it's 2 weeks before to 2 weeks after. And so it doesn't have to be just on the date, okay? It's around, it's a period of time around these things. And then I think you mentioned it, Monica, when you hear on the news there's some big storm, in another state, you start thinking. And for me, I just remember lying there and not knowing at all what to do when it said, you're going to have a landslide. We should have, skedaddled out of there is what we should have done. And we should have been like my son, watching the track and knowing which direction to go. But instead, we just, like you said, kind of hunkered down and well, I don't know what's going to happen. So I want you, those of you who are watching this and those of you who are present, to just remember this is information that if you start feeling odd, funny, irritable, nightmares, blah, 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 it's real. It's a grief response that gets triggered. Now, some of you, several of you talked to me, mentioned that you've been through bad hurricanes. So what are some triggers anybody wants to mention? I'd like to hear them. I bet you have some.
Well, my experience in Honduras was similar and different. In terms of death, it was much more severe.
And that was what year?
1998. But what was the same are the mountains. See, it's the mountains. Because in Honduras, the hurricane came against the mountains. The mountains lifts the air, and it dropped about 40 inches of rain in a few days. And the same thing really kind of happened here. So it's similar in that sense. It's also similar for me because when you go through something like this, it changes you. And I think about you, Susie, and when you go to another country and you work in these kinds of conditions, it also is isolating in a way because you come back. Research shows missionaries have a harder time coming back than they do going because you come back to people who don't really get what you've been through. And I think it's similar, for us. We have people who care about us and love us, but they didn't go through this. And so for me, one of the values of being in the group is we've all shared this experience, and it cuts down on the isolation. I think the other thing for me is when I was in 1990, I was 48 years old. So one of the ways I cope with stress is I activate my agency. I lead, I do things. And in this case, it was like I'm 74. And I remember I have a therapist in Columbus, Ohio, about it, and she just said some simple words that really helped. You've done enough.
Wow. True. Yes, please. Yes, Susie.
The idea of being isolated, I think many of us felt that who went through Helene because, first of all, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know if people outside knew what was happening. And then the anxiety of not being able to communicate was terribly isolating, generated a lot of fear amongst the people that I've talked to, and certainly myself. But the interesting thing was, once I did get in contact with people, I was angry at people who said, "So is everything back to normal now?" Because it wasn't. And there was, as I was saying to Allison earlier, there are so many people who haven't been through such a trauma, who have thought through what disaster really means, what it means to lose so much. And although I personally did not lose power, so therefore my house, which has flooded before, didn't flood because this time the sump pump worked. But people around me were devastated, and we would gather on the sidewalks and share our stories, and people felt compelled to tell their stories over and over again as part of trying to master the emotions that we were feeling. And we looked for community. Everyone on my street checked on everybody else. And then we started having potlucks to share whatever leftover food we needed to use up. And we all began to care about each other in much more active ways. And I felt guilty because I can't use a chainsaw. So I wasn't immediately useful to the people in my neighborhood.
Well, not in that way, but in other ways.
Well, donating money to as many local rescue groups as I possibly could was a very important way to contribute. But if you are someone who's used to getting active and physically responding to people with your hands, with your brains, with your heart, that feeling of helplessness is also hard to bear.
You brought up a number of good points that I'd like to underscore. And one is about relationships. And what some of the themes that came out of our group that I want to just remind you about is that people who, as you say, didn't live through it and are in a distance, and once they learned about it, some people here have said, and my son has said this too, that he felt angry because people who knew that this was a bad thing didn't even bother to reach out. And so can you relate to that? Anybody relate to that?
Yeah, a couple things. Because I work with estranged parents, it's particularly difficult for them because they're going through what may be a life and death situation, and to not hear from your child is like an indifference to whether you live or die. And that is a trauma on top of it. Just another piece, often the information that people are getting after a few days can become politicized. And so when people were getting in touch with me, sometimes it was through the filter of a political kind of perspective, which I found very frustrating.
I got a lot of that from my children, and they all are in North Carolina.
Jeez.
Yeah, but they're not here.
But they were not here. I see what you're saying.
Their perspectives are different politically or something. And I had just passed a helicopter on the ground at the hospital about an hour before one daughter lit in with this.
Yeah, not enough help from the government. Yeah. Some of the other themes that we have shared, if you could pass this to my husband, about the changes in the topography, the changes in places that we once have enjoyed and loved as a distress.
Yeah, what happens when you get to love a place and love things it has, a favorite restaurant, a favorite park, a favorite spot you like to go to, then you kind of build memories around that, memories are built. And it becomes, psychologically a pleasant place to go. So you're used to going there maybe, every once a month on a Friday or a Saturday, and it's your favorite Mexican restaurant, or, they got the greatest margaritas, or those kind of things. You look forward to that, or the art museum, or it's just, those are it gives you pleasure. And then when you find out it's been completely wiped off the map, destroyed, it's a real loss. I mean, it's a personal loss. Like
right.
all those memories that I made, and wedding anniversaries and birthdays and everything at this restaurant or this place, the restaurant's not there anymore. And you just feel like, I can't go there anymore. I can't recapture that feeling. It's, I'm looking forward to that. I've always looked forward to that. Now I can't do that. So it's a real kind of, there's no physical loss in the sense of your home or your family or anything like, but it's a psychological loss, I guess, in terms of what brought you pleasure is no longer there.
Right. And
So
as I often say, there's a name for everything. And the name for that phenomenon, that kind of distress, there's a name. It's called solastalgia, Solastalgia. So it's a grief reaction to the loss of something that you've loved, that you've been to, that you, as you say, to have memories for. What we're talking about in general, because fortunately none of us in this room have lost a family member to this storm, okay? So our trauma is called secondary traumatization. But is it real? You bet. Do you have distress? You bet. And if you're willing to just quickly tell your story, didn't you tell me you felt you got sicker because you couldn't be activated the way you did when you were in your 40s?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I tell people I'm a person who's lived my life like from here up. I'm a pretty head guy. And to discover that these traumas are stored in your body and having an impact on you at a level that's deeper than you can just control it with your mind is something that's really significant. And I was very ill in a hotel room in Fort Mill, and I think it was the illness took me longer to recover from because my immune system was compromised by all the stress. And I encountered that after my son died as well in my body. So I think I really appreciate the grounding experience and those kinds of things we can do because they get to the body. And I think paying attention to that's really important.
Right. And so people, as you just explained, you can get physical. It's not just, crying and irritable, but it's like physical.
And it's not just in your head.
Exactly.
People think, well, are you saying it's just in my head? No, I'm not saying that at all. It's really in your body. And I think the kind of experience that you've provided for folks in a group like this is an important contribution to how we process this and restore our bodies a little bit.
Right. Well, many of us we may have dodged the actual physical bullet, but as you say, we're wounded. We're wounded in other ways. So how can we prepare for this? All right, so one is that we're going to remember that this could happen and that it's normal, just like grief happens, and that's normal. It doesn't mean you have to take a lot of drugs to tranquilize yourself or, antidepressants. In fact, the literature suggests that that's not a good idea unless you have what they call a premorbid condition. You have an underlying condition and of some mental problems, and then you have this trauma, and you may need medication. So I'm not saying against all medication, but I'm saying for most people, it's not necessary.
Yes.
Around this, okay? So some people think that memorializing losses are helpful. Planting a bush, a flower, or something, Can you think of any other ways you might want to memorialize or think about it as we're approaching that anniversary?
May I just a thought?
Sure.
There are actually 2 points. One of my favorite sayings or whatever that I have now as a result of our group
Okay.
came from Rob. And he described loss of place.
Yes.
And I've seen people who have lost their homes and on TV in the films. And maybe this is something I sense a little stronger than some people because this has been home since
It's true.
I was born here.
Exactly.
Places are gone that will never be restored or replaced. And that can happen even if you've lived here just for a year, but I've got an accumulation of things. And the other thing is, I suspect when September 27th comes around, I think the smell of apples is going to bother me.
Explain that.
September, October, apple time, apple pies, candied apples, all kinds of things like that. It just seems like there are a lot of them. And I just use that as an example. But that's one thing. That time of year, just like daffodils in the springtime, pumpkins will probably bother me. I mean, just the association that I don't know how to control, I think will be there.
No.
Anybody else?
I won't be here on the 27th, but what I would do, my inclination would be to physically hug everybody that I love. Because that was really one of the big takeaways of the trauma, was how important our relationships with our friends and our family are. And when we suffer these huge losses, and we've dimensionalized several levels of them, you have to comfort yourself physically, comfort the body that keeps the score, and keep reminding ourselves that we have had losses, but we have also had gains, and we have salvaged a lot in our lives, and we have to hold on to that. So we can think of anniversaries both as a time of mourning, but also as a time of reminder and renewal. I think it's important to keep an eye on that.
Very good point. And it does change you. Yeah. How do you think you've changed in any way since going through this? And that might be a thought. Now,
I think investing in friendship, kind of building on what Susie's saying, the research shows we don't have enough friends. And if we have discovered in this experience an impulse to connect, as I hear some of you have, nurture that, cultivate that. Friendship is something that takes a bit of work, like any relationship. And I think connecting to people and being intentional is a good way to memorialize. I mean, it's not a plaque or anything concrete, but it still, I think, can be helpful.
and I think reevaluating your relationships.
Yeah.
So just as I've suggested to my son, okay, don't hold your hopes that some of these people that you thought were so close to you, maybe they weren't. And maybe reevaluate it that way, Mm-hmm. We haven't heard from a couple of you down here. How about you, Joellen? What would you like to add? Anything?
Yeah, I will add to that. I've heard a lot of good ideas. And also, it occurs to me that we live in a most beautiful area. And to connect with our surroundings, to go out in the woods more and sit very quietly and listen. I've been reading and hearing more about what has been discovered about trees, about their interconnectedness.
Yes.
And
they communicate, don't they?
And they communicate. Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. So maybe they will communicate. Oh, I do believe they will communicate with us if we care to listen. And I think this kind of deeper connection can also help healing to a great degree. That and also a daily meditation practice, which I recommend to everyone. It's my mainstay and has been for many decades. So I'll leave it there.
Beautiful.
You know, Jean, I remember something that you shared at the groups about how going out in nature helped you. Do you want to?
Yes, it really does to, turn off all the devices, the news, and listen to the birds. And I like to pick flowers. And I would give bouquets to good friends.
She's given me
And
several. It was so sweet
But
of
I think
you.
I really enjoyed it. It was like therapy for me, flower power. But it's just that it's so hard because you think that, oh, it happened once. When is it happening again? And it's just, and with more severities. Frightening to me in that respect, although I know the only day we can count on is the present. But it's, going forward, I thought, oh, it really makes you more realistic, I guess.
Yes, yes. And another point that is recommended by this Uniformed Services University, where I took some training, is that we do need to limit our media consumption about it. You know, I remember during the pandemic watching everything I could and thinking, well, clearly I'm going to die. I mean, you watch it enough and you think, I remember Richard Engel, whom I think is the greatest reporter ever, in Italy, and showing all these deaths. And I'm thinking, well, clearly there's no more purpose here and I'll be dead. So, but you said something that I just remembered so well during the group about what you did during the, after the hurricane. Remember what you said about watching something? Romantic comedies.
Yeah.
Rom-coms.
I binged on the Hallmark movies, anything that was light, that was the opposite of depressing. That was what got me through.
I remember that. I remember all these little tips. Yeah. Two last points. Okay. In going through, all this reading and studying I've been doing, I ran across a name of a former colleague of mine at Kent State. His name is Stephen Hobfall. And he came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and tell me we haven't talked about them here. I think we have. One is safety, that you have to feel safe, and that's through clear communication and also having a plan of where you're going to go, if it's a shelter or somewhere else, a plan where you're going to be safe after, where a disaster's brewing. Next are what Allison was explaining and Joe Ellen just mentioned, and that is calming strategies. So there's safety, there's calming, knowing that these stress reactions that we're all talking about are normal, right? Third point is efficacy. Efficacy meaning a belief that as Susie was saying, that the community will manage. We will get through this. We will. We can be. We have efficacy ourselves by being prepared. I feel more, efficacious now that I know more about a to-go bag. Who knew? Not me. Okay, so efficacy. And then the fourth one, and that's many of you are talking about that now, and that is connectedness. The strengthening your support networks, your friends. I have this one friend in Ohio, and she's been a social worker. We work together, and yesterday she wrote to me and she said, "How are you? Are you in that storm?" And she was the very first person, Rob, you remember that, Jane, the very first person that reached out to us, when Helene hit, and she did yesterday. And then the last point is hope. Sharing stories of success, how people got through things, setting some goals for yourself about preparedness, and for some people, having spiritual or faith-based support does help. Doesn't help everybody necessarily, but it helps many, as you know. So safety, calming, efficacy, connectedness, and hope are the basic elements to get through these kinds of things from everything that I've studied. Okay, we're going to close with a very brief, where's our mic? But you have a very soft voice, Allison. So a very brief mindfulness exercise to
Can I just
lead
say
us off.
one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have dread as much as I anticipate not feeling good around, as much as I do think when September comes, I'm going to feel a little funny.
Yeah.
But I'm not dreading it. I don't expect the same thing to happen again.
Let's hope not. Yeah.
And just to add to that, as a culture, we're very afraid of feeling negative emotions. And so the anticipation of an anniversary can cause so much anxiety in itself. But I think that the only way to survive this is to go right through the middle, to work, to have the courage to go through the emotions and to congratulate ourselves when we come out the other side, and to understand that we've been brave. The brave thing is to face it. The cowardly way is to suppress or deny it.
Yes.
So let's give ourselves some big hugs when this is all over.
Very good.
I think we need to play I'm Still Standing and dance around.
Can you sing that? I'm still standing. Okay, Allison, you're gonna
Yes,
finish
Susie,
us.
I feel like that was a beautiful segue into what I was thinking about this practice, right? Because some of y'all have practiced mindfulness before. For others of y'all, it might be new. But the purpose of mindfulness is not to avoid the negative emotions. It's not to, we use it as a calming technique, but it's not like, oh crap, I'm not calm, I'm not doing it right. I think that a big part of it is seeing what's there, your thoughts, your feelings, observing that, and then having an anchor to come back to bring yourself back to the present moment. But inevitably, our minds are going to go somewhere. That's what they do. And most of the time, the somewhere is stressful and it's a what if, and, we're planning for the future. So that's something that I always ask people to keep in mind of, don't be hard on yourself if you notice during this practice or during any time your mind straying somewhere where you don't want it to be. It's likely doing that for a reason. And I think the best thing we could do is listen to it sometimes instead of trying to make it go away. So let's do a little practice to maybe do that right now. So we'll do a more traditional breathing meditation for a couple minutes here. So it can be helpful to, sit upright, feet on the floor if you'd like, but really be comfortable. You can place your hands on your lap. And again, you can go ahead and either close your eyes or cast your gaze down toward the floor. And let's just start with a couple deep breaths here, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose or mouth. Maybe you want to sigh it out. That always feels good. One more time, in through the nose and out through the nose or mouth. And then let's gently focus our attention on our breath for a moment. There are lots of places in the body that we might feel our breath. We might feel it in our belly or our chest. We might feel our breath in our nostrils as the cool air goes in and warm air comes out. Maybe you feel it in your throat. Just notice for yourself where you're feeling the breath most clearly right now. If you want, you can place a hand on your belly or on your chest if that's helpful. Also to give yourself some comfort if you'd like. So just finding that place, getting curious. And as we rest our attention on the breath, we're not trying to control it, we're not trying to change anything, we're just trying to notice. And if breath doesn't feel good for you right now, sometimes it doesn't, you could choose a different anchor. You could choose your hands or your feet or sounds in the room if breath is not feeling accessible right now. But if you're paying attention to your breath, see if you can just notice its quality. Maybe you're breathing shallow, maybe it's deep. It can help to say in and out quietly to yourself to maintain your attention there. And as you notice thoughts start to arise, seeing if you can just note them and then gently redirect your attention back to your breath. I like the metaphor of redirecting a puppy. We don't try to force the puppy's attention. We don't try to force it back into what we want it to do. We gently nudge. So again, just noticing what the breath feels like in this moment. Maybe it's the rise and fall of your belly or your chest, or the coolness and warmth as your breath goes in and out. And one more time, if you notice thoughts coming up, maybe it's uncomfortable to sit in silence like this, uncomfortable to be still, or maybe you're thinking about what you're going to do when this is over. And then just gently redirect your attention back to the breath. And then slowly coming back into the body, maybe noticing your weight on the seat beneath you. Noticing sounds in the room. You can gently open your eyes when you're ready. And look around the room, have a stretch if you like.
Thank you all. I hope that through this video that we will inspire many people to have such programs and to think about some of the ideas that were described in this wonderful group today. So,
Thank you, Paula.
namaste. Thank you.